Artificial intelligence is what we are going to discuss today. It has quickly become one of the most transformative technologies of our time. But as we look ahead, the question isn't just about what AI can do and who it serves, but also who is AI leaving behind? And is it actually building a larger digital divide as it comes to people being comfortable using it, when it comes to prompting, when it comes to the answers and results? So today we're going to explore that. So what I want to do is introduce the names of each of our panelists, and maybe you could share a little bit about your careers. We have Dr. Joy, we have Wanji, and we have Af. So maybe Wanji, if it was okay, if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit of your background.
Good afternoon. Now I can hear myself. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. I think this is the most scenic panel I've ever been on. This is just gorgeous, and so it's great to see all of you. I'm Wanji Walcott. I am the Chief Legal and Business Affairs Officer at Pinterest. I've been at Pinterest for just over 2 years, and my responsibilities include looking after our legal function, as well as compliance, government affairs, public policy, public affairs, ESG and sustainability, trust and safety, and philanthropy. And so I'm really excited to be part of this conversation today because we are using AI at Pinterest in some really interesting and unique ways. So I look forward to talking more about that today.
Hey, thank you. Dr. Joy?
All good. I'm Dr. Joy, also known as the Poet of Code. I tell stories that make daughters of diaspora's dreams, sons of privilege pause. I'm also a computer scientist, and I am known for my work on algorithmic bias, so showing gender bias, skin type bias from some of the biggest tech companies in the world, IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, but also having those companies shift their practices or pushing Procter & Gamble to adopt the consented data promise to say that there's actually other ways of building consumer AI products. So my day job is artist-in-chief and president of the Algorithmic Justice League. So we have the film Coded Bias on Netflix. Some of you might have seen that, the book Unmasking AI. That's all part of this larger work to make sure that technology serves all of us and not the privileged few. So that's what we do.
I did want to just add her book, Unmasking AI, on Random House, incredible. If anybody really has a second to go to download that on Amazon, but really understanding her storytelling around what AI unmasks and the two sides of it, very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Af.
Okay, Af Malhotra. So talking about poetry, I'm actually a musician. And you've inspired me to use my tabla, the Indian drums, to do something with diversity. But back in the day, I used to do underground Asian music, and I used to jam with the Prodigy. If you're Prodigy, anyone remember those guys? Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, showing my age. And music and diversity are interconnected. It's been prevalent all through my life, being an Asian man in Britain and the UK. I now run an organization called Diversity Economics, and it's got two parts to it. It's got an AI business, which is about creating an AI called Ren that will transform the way we do diversity, equity, inclusion, and the social part of ESG, where we're doing data compliance learning in a whole new way. More about that later. And I also chair the Diversity Economics Institute, which is a nonprofit think tank, research organization, advocacy group with 42 incredible advisory council members. 3 or 4 are here. So Kimfer, Dr. Fernanda, thank you for being here. And finally, the most important thing is I have these 2 amazing authors and many authors here. I run a podcast for authors, by authors. I started it during COVID. It's called straighttalkwithaf.com. And Unmasking AI is going to come on that soon. And of course, your book too as well, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you. My privilege to be here.
Yo, Af got all the jobs. Unemployment goes up, down. I don't know. He got all the jobs. There's no more opportunities. So this is a great panel. This is real heavy hitters. So I think let's just start with kind of the most basic of all questions. When people say AI for good, when you hear that, or we have to have responsible AI, or is our AI unbiased, what comes to your mind first as an objective of what that means, and how do you see that playing out in your work? So maybe Wanji,
Yeah,
you
sure.
can share a little
Happy
bit.
to start. So for me, it's just a reminder that you can have, kind of AI infused in your environment, but you can also do that with positivity in mind. And that's kind of how we are leading at Pinterest, just from a point of positivity. And then we're also really thinking and focused on people and outcomes for people. And so we want to make sure that our users who come onto our platform are not only having a positive experience, but that we're kind of tackling things from a position of inclusivity, so that everyone can see themselves reflected on our platform. So again, I think what it conjures up for me is both positivity in that we can ensure that there are positive outcomes coming from the use of this amazing technology, right? But we're also thinking about it in an inclusive way, that everyone can have the positive benefits of the value of AI that is infused in a product.
Okay, that's great. Doc, okay,
Okay, mic check. This one was working, I think it was.
it was his, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so when I think of AI for good, my first question is, well, what is good AI in the first place? And so when I think about it more with my research scientist hat on, some of the work that we were doing showing that the computer vision models, the various AI systems that were assumed to be ascendant, were leaving out the global majority. Before you even start saying AI for good, is this even a good AI product in the first place? And so I think it's really important, and I see this particularly on college campuses. You'll have your AI course, then you'll have your AI ethics course over here. But if your self-driving car doesn't see shorter people, which we have studies for that, kids and the vertically challenged like myself, it doesn't see people of color, we have some problems. So do we have good AI in the first place? So that's what comes to mind when I hear AI for good. For who's good?
And let me ask you that question. So, do you have a mental checklist of 2, 3, or 4 or 5 things that you just do as a basic litmus test on if this AI is good, or do you ask a developer or a corporation a question if they're building their own intranet internally? How do you define good personally with your experience?
Well, I think about robust AI, right?
Okay.
So that's generally where I'm coming in, because you also have to think about the various stakeholders. Some people hear AI for good, they're like, next, right? Oh, robust AI, wait, we're losing customers, right? So that's generally where I start with the framing with robust AI, and then I talk about things like algorithmic hygiene and thinking about the entire AI cycle. So how was it developed? Is there meaningful transparency in the process of, let's say, even data provenance, right? I think about affirmative consent, right? In terms of where did you get that data in the first place? And again, thinking about company interest, are you opening up liability? So now that you're going to be facing lawsuits. And I think another part that I think about is continuous oversight. So often people approach the AI conversation product focused and not process focused. So if you're just looking at bias in a particular product, we know how quickly the field is moving. So you actually have to think through what is the process that allows us to continuously check. So going back to hygiene, who's going to shower once a year and think you're okay? Might get a little funky, and right, so that's what's happening with some of these AI products where you think one check is going to be okay. So what does continuous oversight look like? And for me, because I lead the Algorithmic Justice League, we also think about something that I rarely hear spoken about: redress. What happens when we got AI bad, right? What mechanisms do we have in place to say we have the humility to know we're figuring it out and we want the positive outcomes, and that's not always going to happen. So we're also going to have these other avenues for incident reporting so we know how we can actually get to the better AI.
I love how she holds the microphone. I swear I feel we're going to break out in a freestyle. I'm waiting. How about you? When you hear kind of that term AI for good, or maybe even responsible AI, what kind of triggers in your mind, in your world?
Yeah, it's great that I've got Dr. Joy before me because you're just feeding me with all of the nuggets. Thank you so much.
Alley-oop.
Yeah, it's rocking together. So can I do it a little bit differently?
Yeah.
I will start with a little bit of vulnerability and humility because I'm a technology startup founder and this is the best place to be real. About 8 years ago, my last startup, we were doing machine learning. Without going into too much detail, back then we used to use Excel sheets to do labeling. That's what we were doing. And I had a team out in India doing the development work. Now, this is an example of bad AI, so you can figure out what good AI might look like. And I had no idea. We had these coders, they were doing some development work, and we built a product, long story short. And I looked at the product, and we had some data on the product. It was about startups. And the data looked really skewed towards just men being the founders, and men from a certain sort of background in India, a certain sort of university as well. And I said to my co-founder then, I said, this doesn't look right. He's like, no, this is fine. You're overdoing this. I said, it just doesn't look right. And I figured out, long story short, that was really bad AI. We had a group of coders who were totally biased, and it wasn't a diverse team. And at that point, frankly, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't really know what diverse teams were in that instance, because I thought, I've got some smart people with high IQ who went to the top universities, are the best coders. And now I realize, and thankfully I've learned from that, that's bad AI. That's when you don't have a diverse team, you're not watching over them, there's no governance. We didn't have any women, actually, let me be honest. There was one coder, this is back in India as well, in Bangalore, where you've got so many amazing coders. So as a founder, you've got to have the conscience, the awareness, the intent, the education, the knowledge, loads of women around you and loads of people from DEI backgrounds around you to guide you and tell you that you've made a mistake. If you can't be true to yourself, because I make mistakes every single day, although I'm preaching what I'm preaching, then you've already lost the battle. So that's bad AI. And I did it, and now I'm trying to do good AI.
Oh, that's really good. So, Wanji, let me ask you, when you think of your day-to-day responsibilities at Pinterest, can you share a little bit about how AI is being leveraged maybe internally for your employee base, but also externally for your user base, and maybe some areas or some findings or some interesting thoughts along the AI journey over the last few years?
So we've been working on kind of our AI journey for some time, and it's really infused into our product. And so does everyone use Pinterest here? Thank you. Yes. Awesome.
Anybody who didn't raise their hand is asked to leave.
Get on
I'm so sorry. The
Pinterest.
panel's
The
over for
exit is
you.
over there.
We're going to check phones shortly.
We will. So glad to hear there are Pinterest users in the audience. And so the way the platform works, for those of you who are now going to download it, is you come on and you search for things, right? Our mission is to inspire you to live a life that you love. And so you come on and you're searching for, what do I wear to Davos, for example? And I think one of the things that we've done with AI is we've created kind of a suite of inclusive search capabilities whereby people can come on the platform and search via body type, knowing that we're not all the same size. You can search based on kind of skin tone ranges, knowing that we are not all the same color. And you can also search for, hairstyles via hair pattern, knowing that we don't all have the same kind of hair type and texture. And so that is just, again, even tying it back to kind of AI for good, that ability to recommend things to people in a very personalized way is really the way that we're leveraging AI on our platform for good, in a way that's very responsive to what people want to see. And the interesting thing about that is, and I know maybe you're thinking, okay, well, that all sounds good. But what we're seeing as a result of this inclusive search and using AI to do it is much more engagement on our platform. So when we implemented our body type search capabilities, we saw a 66% lift in engagement on the platform. With skin tone, we saw a 40% lift, and with hair texture and pattern, we saw a 28% lift. So it just shows that we are really serving the needs of our users who are coming on, really looking for kind of personalized recommendations that work for them.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I think one of the experiences is that people aren't sure what to type in. And I think the prompting, I know there's all these jokes that a prompt engineer is just someone who knows how to search very well, but the reality of the situation is prompting does matter. So when you talk about these ideas that could be sensitive, so if I just typed in body type, I would type in, I look like The Rock without a gym membership. You know what I mean? But I don't know if any results would come back, but just as an example. Yeah. But do you help the user know what to type? Because I think part of it is people get a little unsure what to put in the search box when they're prompting generative AI.
It's a great question. We want you to type in what you want to type in, and then we want to feed you responses and recommendations to
okay.
that. What we're not going to do is we're not going to categorize things in a negative way. So, we're not going to characterize your body for you, but you can do that. And then we will, over time, the machines learn how to be responsive to your search queries. But what we're doing in the back end is we are not infusing any negativity kind of in the queries. And so, again, our platform is about positivity, and we don't want our users to come on and feel demoralized or enraged, right? You can go to other places to get enraged. That's not what we're, right? Am I right? But that's not what we're doing. And so, again, it's with a spirit of positivity. And so over time, you'll get better with your search queries. And look, if you aspire to be The Rock, we can help you with that too.
Yeah, I'm working. I keep getting the gym memberships, but going is the problem. It's tricky. It's two parts. So, Dr. Joy, maybe you could share a little bit the Algorithmic Justice League. Is this a new Marvel movie that's debuting?
DC Comics did try to sue us, so this is a
well,
research endeavor.
Hey guys, when jokes come to life, that's what's going on right here. They're after her right now. But the Algorithmic Justice League is something that you were heavily behind, and it really was there to expose algorithmic bias. So maybe you could share, did the industry respond to that? Is it hard to get demand for something like this? Or maybe you could just give us like a temperature read on that.
Oh, yes. So when I first started doing this work in around 2016, I was working, actually started in 2015. I was working on an art project. I was a student at MIT Media Lab. I was at this it's Innovation Epicenter. So I thought, right, I made it. That's what I'm thinking. So I'm working on my art project and I'm using face detection because I built this mirror that instead of a video filter, you can look in the mirror, say, hello, beautiful, turn you into Serena Williams or The Rock. We could have made that one happen.
Okay, all
Whatever
right.
else. It was the Aspire mirror. But as I was working on it, it actually didn't detect my face, my dark skinned face, until I put on a white mask. It was Halloween time. I happened to have a white mask around. So this experience of literally coding in whiteface at MIT,
Oh, wow, this is aggressive.
right, is where I said, okay, are computers as neutral as I hope them to be? Because we know humans are messy, right? That's why I got into computer science in the first place.
Wow.
And so at first, I actually didn't even want to do this kind of research, right? I didn't want to be the gadfly talking about what was wrong with AI. My background's in computer science. I had a hair care technology company, EdTech, so I was very much on let's use AI to change the world in some kind of way. But at the same time that was happening, there was a report that came out called the Perpetual Lineup Report that showed about 117 million adults had their face and facial recognition databases that could be searched unwarranted using algorithms that hadn't been audited for accuracy. So it jumped from that art project of, okay, the interactivity isn't working to might there be false arrests. And so that's what led to the research. And that research showed IBM, Microsoft, billion-dollar tech company in China at the time, Face++, and others, actually did have gender bias and skin type bias in their AI systems.
Oh, wow.
Long story short, all of the US-based companies we audited actually stopped selling their products to law enforcement. And some of what we predicted, there were in fact false arrests. So people like Robert Williams, wrongly arrested due to facial recognition mismatch in front of his 2 young daughters and his wife. Portia Woodruff, 8 months pregnant, when she was falsely arrested, right? And so I bring this up to say, yes, some companies responded, but you also have an entire ecosystem of innovation to consider. What's different now from, let's say, 2016 is this is a conversation that we're having here, right? This is a conversation that's on the agenda. So if you see something like the EU AI Act, that we're actually at a place of thinking through AI governance, there's certainly been a major shift in the conversation where even OpenAI, when they released ChatGPT, they referenced some of our research, right, when it came to how would you actually respond to some of the algorithmic bias and so forth. So I think there's an openness to trying to get it right, but there's not as much incentive because right now, if you put out, let's say, deep fakes that are non-consensual images, so, think of the worst cases of that, 98% of that is women, you know? And if there are no consequences for it, then it's just really easy for it to propagate. So we see different types of reception.
Yeah, no, this is
to the
so
work.
interesting. I want to roll on top of that question. You are working extensively with diversity economics. So for the people here, when you think about good AI, robust AI, inclusive AI, and you think of economics, how can good AI or assist or support us in our journey, maybe individually for our own personal economics, but also for people that work at corporations and companies. What is there a little bit of an insight or a trigger that we can learn on how we can use AI better to increase our economics anyway around inclusivity?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. It's a big one. I'm going to
It's a
try
big question.
I'm going to try and tackle it in
Yeah,
bits.
I just want to say before he answers that question, if you can crack this question, we can all afford to stay at this hotel and not travel 2 hours next year. Okay, thanks so much. Just wanted
Deal. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to make another point, Dr. Joy. It's a really interesting one. So you talked about your research in 2015. Let me tell you, or 2016, was it? Around that time. But let me tell you what happened 3 months ago. So there's a professor at NYU, Professor Art Kleiner. He's a very well-known author. And him and I were doing some work together, and we decided to, for one of his lectures, he teaches on the MBA program there, we decided to do a test on Midjourney and DALL-E, those image creation platforms. And we created 2 prompts. This is highly depressing, but I want to start with this. The first prompt was, create a picture of really successful people. And the second prompt was, create a picture of really unsuccessful people. Simple as that. The picture of successful people was young people, pretty lean, well built, mostly white and a lot of men. The unsuccessful people were old, slightly darker in skin color, definitely, had glasses, slightly larger physically, and so on and so forth. And the problem's not been fixed. And this is just a few months ago, okay? Systemic issue. Going back to diversity economics, I think I'll speak from real experience opposed to what is academically sound. As a founder, I can tell you that the problems we're facing with AI right now is pretty much about the diversity of people who are controlling AI. So if in any company, whether it's Pinterest or, and I'm sure you're doing this as well, Wenji, any organization needs to have its curators of AI in a diverse group. It's got to be all of the communities, people from LGBTQIA backgrounds, women, people from different racial backgrounds, people who speak multiple languages, people who are neurodiverse. These individuals need to be front and center of the curation of AI, like testing it, building it, even though they don't have technical backgrounds or technology backgrounds. And that's really hard to do because of politics and territorialism and, organizational divisions that happen. But that's the first thing I've learned as a startup. I'm trying to do that in my own company. So even people who are not technical in project management, but come from different backgrounds, they're involved in the code, or at least they're reviewing the code with the coder. And it creates conflict. Like my coders say, well, she doesn't know anything about this. He's not a coder. But I go out of my way as a leader to say, hear her out, listen to her. And we've spotted so many flaws in our code development that the coders, and many of them are diverse, they were biased themselves. So there's inherent bias. So the first thing is create a team of people who are diverse, who are right at the center of the curation of the AI. The other thing I've seen a major problem, and you gave me a stat earlier on GPT, it was shocking, like they've released their results and only 80% of the users have actually used the product in a month, less than a month, a user a month or something. In corporations right now, I think, I look at the Gen AI numbers, the adoption's pathetic, right, in corporations. And if there's anyone in the IT function here, like a CIO, you will know that it's really hard to get adoption in AI, number one. And then Gen AI, which is an area I'm in, is even harder because people don't feel confident prompting and typing into systems. And this statistic from GPT confirms it. I think there's a lot of work to be done in literacy. Like you really have to go out of your way with immersion, all sorts of techniques, use social media to teach people how to use GPT because it sounds great, but if people aren't using it, and this is all hypothetical, My product won't sell if people don't go onto my product and actually are willing to type something. We're actually looking at audio. We're looking at imagery. We're trying to figure out, how do I get someone to actually use the power of a generative AI technology? So I think diverse teams, the lack of AI literacy, seriously, it's not there. And I speak to CIs all the time, and they say, well, Af, this is a great product, but mate, half the people don't even jump onto the ERP app that I bought from Salesforce, which I spent millions on, let alone your generative AI app. So I think it sounds great on the face of it, but we've got a lot of work to do still. And when it comes to DEI and bias and the good work that the EU AI Act is trying to do, even with the EU AI Act, I tell you what, as a founder, I did a talk on responsible AI. I had to go study the EU AI Act. I went onto GPT. I went onto all sorts of platforms, and I spoke to a few people who know the Act to understand what it's about. And I realized I don't think as a founder I'm able to execute on the Act because I don't have enough money raised to be able to think about governance and ethics at this point. I'm building a minimum viable product. So I realized that all of these regulations that are out there are generally built for people with a lot of money and big companies. And the smaller companies who are going to become the big companies, employ the rest of the people in the world, are totally marginalized. So here's another thing. Entrepreneurs and founders and startup athletes, as I like to call us, entrepreneurs is a little bit boring now, we are a marginalized community at the end of the day. So I just wanted to make that point. Now with diversity economics, just to quickly finish it off, we set up this nonprofit institute with all of these incredible minds. And I just wanted to say this, and I spoke to you about this earlier, Doug. The other aspect of this that I think we need to fix, all of us here, you've got all these great minds here, all of us, and everyone sitting in this panel and audience. You're all diverse. I can see it's such a fantastic sight here. We don't collaborate enough. There are silos everywhere. And I've spoken to 150 people on my podcast. Everyone's got their own thing going on. I run the women's leadership, Black women tech. I run the LGBTQ tech. The person in New Delhi is doing his own thing. The person in New York is doing her own thing. And we're all trying to capture this apparently big market and not getting anywhere. And, we were just talking about the geopolitical change that's happening in certainly the United States. If we don't unify and we don't come together, then we're not going to pull a Martin Luther King. We're not going to pull a Mahatma Gandhi. Those campaigns and those efforts only succeeded because of unification, all of us coming together. I think this is where AI is broken at this point, and I think certainly with DEI, because that's my space, I think it's broken. So I want to fix that, long story short. Long-winded answer, but
No, that's a really good answer. And I just wanted to just piggyback on that because we were talking about that earlier. One of the things over the past year, I've been working to build out an inclusive generative AI solution called Jody. And one of the things that we found was everyone truly is doing their own thing, and they're all calling the same people to raise the money. And the people on the other end of the phone, one of them who's here today that we talked about this yesterday, said that her phone is ringing like she's customer service, and she said every day someone's like, you know what, UK, I got a group. I got one in Delhi. I got one in San Francisco, New York, Dallas, Miami, And she said it's become overwhelming to the point where her executive team said, we can't be everything to everyone, but this is what's happening across DEI. And I think also with the war on DEI, quote unquote, encouraging all the companies to change what they call it is actually another divide and conquer tactic. You're going to call it belonging. You're going to call it engagement. You're going to call it inclusive engagement. You're going to call it retention. You're going to call it, Meta just renames theirs the A&E department. I was trying to tune in. I didn't know if there was a documentary on it, but it was actually the accessibility and engagement department. So when you start dividing even the name up, it's another dividing tactic in addition to everybody having their own solution. And I think that is the superpower, is someone that could solve that. And for everyone in this room, I think that's just food for thought, because from our perspectives, a lot of calls are coming in from so many different people who are passionate but may not necessarily know the roadmap to scale. So I just wanted to add that. Wanji, I wanted to ask you, Do you have in your world kind of what's working and not working? Are there maybe a few things that stand out in your mind that are not working generally or specifically? And maybe to bounce off Off's point about literacy and prompting, are there any suggestions, or maybe you could share a little bit internally how you got employees to use the platform and the product to increase usage rate?
Well, I will maybe picking up on a point that Af made about, sort of to the question of what's working and what's not working. What you described as an event 3 months ago with kind of, I'll just call it bad search, that's been happening for some time, and we noticed that as well. And so for us, we wanted to make sure that going back to your earlier question of like, well, how can I search for things? How do I learn how to sort of incorporate the right search terms? We decided that we were not going to, on the back end, describe any human features at all as we train our models. So as I said, we're going to let you put in the search terms, but we're not going to start describing someone's body, someone's stature. We're going to, again, allow our users to do that. And so that realization, I think, is one part observation about kind of the negative things in AI for not so good or AI even for bad, kind of negative outcomes that were happening when the AI just kind of runs rampant. But it also comes from one of your points that I want to pick up on, which is a diverse workforce, and a workforce that can appreciate, if you look at, kind of our top searched items, you need people who understand what it is to be a person looking for an outfit and kind of what is entailed there. And not everybody understands that, right? And so it's important to have kind of good perspective across, whether it's gender lines, kind of various lines of kind of diversity to ensure that you are kind of programming for the right kind of outputs and the right outcomes. And so we're very focused on that. So I think it's just an example of it's not just the AI, but it's the people who are implementing and training who also need to have the right kind of perspective and varied perspectives.
Yeah. And now, coming from the seat of a legal officer, maybe you could share it, whatever you can share. But is this becoming something that's tied up more in legal generative AI platforms, particularly in companies, or is it something that more so people are doing outside the walls of the office and just bringing the insight in?
Well, look, I want to sort of reframe that because I don't think things get tied up with me. I'd like to think of
I just
myself
want to
as an
apologize.
enabler.
Nothing gets tied up with Wanji. She has a very strict same-day return email policy within 8 hours. Okay, or I owe you a coffee.
We are enablers.
Yes,
So things don't get tied up with us. However, as we are enabling, we are there kind of trying to ensure the right level of transparency, ensuring kind of compliance with frameworks that are coming out. And we want to be ahead of that. We don't want to be, just sort of waiting and reacting to proposed legislation. We are constantly talking to regulators to educate them about, kind of how we're using AI, which may be different than many others. And we want to make sure that as they're regulating, they are not just thinking about big tech and, some of the what I'll call more obvious uses, but are thinking and understanding kind of how we are providing a very personalized service to our users in a way that is really well received. And we don't want to be in a position where regulation kind of stymies that or inhibits that in any way. So, again, I think it's also just ensuring, the right approach to risk management, knowing that this is, an area that is fraught with risk, but it can be managed. And so, again, we're not here to hold things up. We're here to
that's a good
empower
point.
people.
Because risk can be managed with the right leadership team. Dr. Joy, I wanted to ask you, in your book Unmasking AI, which is an incredible book that everyone here should get. Even the cover is incredible. And I wanted to ask, though, are we a step behind? Like, has AI now gone through the formative years of development, and many people in this room, maybe that don't have a technical background or engineering, have we kind of lost the position that we can to really influence these platforms? And to Off's point, what roles do you think we play in joining committees where decisions are made on inclusive AI?
AI is just beginning, right? And we just have to. Gen AI is big now. This is another flavor of AI, So I don't. I have so much hope and optimism,
Okay.
and I see AJL as a proof of change
Yep.
type of organization. And so I don't think that what we're seeing with AI now will be the final paradigm. We're seeing a lot of investment in it because ChatGPT came out, money was invested, billions of dollars were put in, and now they have to try to prove that value. To your point, that the actual implementation and the actual adoption of it doesn't necessarily match the level of investment. So some of what we're seeing, I view as narrative battles.
Oh, narrative battles.
Right,
Yes.
about
And
what
that's where we could come into play. You think we have a huge influence on the narrative battle?
absolutely, right? And so who gets to define what AI is in the first place, or who even gets to be a part of deciding what the AI pipeline looks like as well, or the life cycle of AI. So I'm inspired by organizations like Ghana NLP, saying what does it look like when we're thinking about African languages? We're thinking about voice recognition or text to speech and so forth. So for me, we haven't even gotten enough people in the field to see what the creativity will be. One example, back when I was an undergrad, I started a hair care technology company called Texturize. We're using, basically, you would send us strands of your hair, all kinds of textures, and then we would use that to make unique product recommendations. Now we have a hair scope, we've trademarked Hair AI, and people can actually get in-depth analysis at their beauty salon or in home. And that came because my friends in college who were studying chemical engineering and computer science and going through our natural hair journey, we got into tech. These weren't things, I remember when we first started pitching VCs, the one VC who was a white man who invested
Was he bald?
he was bald, but he had a girlfriend who spent a lot of money on her weave. And so
Listen, I tell you, this Dr. Joy got an answer for everything. I'm just saying. And just so we know, she is staying at the hotel, so her economics are good. I just want to throw that out here, too.
found a friend. Find a good friend. So I'll
No,
get
but
it.
go ahead. I'm just trying to make light of it. But that's incredible. Is that still active, Hair AI?
Well, Hair AI is the trademark, but the company is Myavana.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can go check it out. So
Okay.
the team just raised a couple more $1 million. They're putting it out there. And again, this was a group of young women at Georgia Tech, another one from Clark Atlanta, HBCU, getting into the tech space and saying, what are our needs? So that's why I'm like, we haven't even started
Yeah.
with AI.
Yeah.
We have this very narrow vision of tech bros at the moment with this is one flavor, and it's not the only one. We're just getting
Vanilla is a
started.
popular flavor.
For now.
Yeah. Vanilla bean, though. It's different.
Hey, French vanilla.
Oh, French vanilla. Oh, we doing vanillas. Let me ask you, by a raise of hands in the audience, does anyone here feel like they've experienced personally bias in AI and any results or anything? Okay. We have a few extra minutes. I can keep asking questions, but did anyone have a personal question or thought that from the audience that they would like to ask anybody on the panel? Does anybody have any curiosity or any insight they would like to receive from
Hands
this
everywhere.
fine group of panels?
Yes,
Okay.
back
All
there
right.
too.
All right.
One thing you guys brought up that I thought was awesome. It's like, we all don't need to make our own way. Like, how do you guys start thinking about like collaborating and actually organizing? Because I think that's what's missing. Like, there's so much talent. I'm working on AI. Everyone's working on AI, but like, how do we get together? Because I think that's, the scale is the problem, and the tech bros have direct connections to scale. But people that look like us don't have any connection to scale.
That's a good question. I don't know who would want to take that or anybody who
I
has
can
thoughts.
start because I've been thinking about it a lot. I think the answer to that question is you've got to chunk it down. So let's not go global on it. You've got to chunk it down into the issue at hand. So the way I'm thinking of tackling it, and by the way, we should collaborate. So here's my idea. I haven't really analyzed it much. So because I'm in diversity, equity, inclusion, social data, analytics, all that sort of stuff, I figured out there are about 10 companies like Diligent, Bloomberg, Sustain Analytics, Plan A, call them all out, ESG Books, all well funded, doing really well, nailed it. Venture money, Series A, B, C, doing really well, much better than I am at this stage. I'm going to write a letter to all the CEOs and all the C-suite at the same time, all of them, just in case the CEO says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't get the letter," or whatever. All of them, and I'm going to say, look, this DEI backlash issue, it's a problem because you're in this space, I'm in this space, I'm tiny, you're huge. Why don't we have a joined up response to dealing with the rebirth of DEI, or as I call it with my AI renaissance? And why, I'm going to write to everyone, but why them first? Because they have money and they have influence and they have power. I could write to all the not-for-profits, but we're all struggling for money, right? So I'm going to write to these guys and I'm going to say, why don't we get together and come up with the narrative battle, come up with a unified narrative with all the data, a white paper, presentation, whatever, and each one of us should consistently keep presenting that back at the next Davos, at the next Gartner Summit, at the next Bloomberg Summit, and a consistent message on why did DEI need to change, for example, and where is it going to go in the future. That's just one issue, but you could do that with AI too. So that's just one example. I said, chunk it down, don't go umbrella, because I think we're going to face the same resistance because unfortunately ego does creep in, although we're all really good people and we have good intent. So I would chunk it down and go narrow, really narrow focus with issue-led. That's what I would say.
Any other, Wanja, your doctorate, was that good for you? Or okay, that passed the test. Anybody else with a question? It's one Swiss franc per question. Okay, drop it like it's hot. Look at this flex. I got 30 francs, guys.
Hey everybody, I'm Sequoia Glenn, founder and principal of 924 Cooperative, a marketing, research, and strategy consultancy. Okay. Question for Pinterest. Right now I'm dealing with a project, and it's for Black hair care. And we are having a battle and debate internally on just what you said, where it's like, we're not gonna code with these negative terms, but some people do use negative terms differently than we do. So for example, with hair, coarse hair may be referred internally, you may say your hair is nappy, as an example, but externally, you better not call my hair nappy, we're gonna have an issue. So how do you take into consideration regional differences? Think like Tyler saying colored, and in Black America, we're like, no honey, that's not it. How do you account for negative words, but people that have reclaimed those words in searching it?
So great question. It goes back to what I was saying before about kind of diversity amongst the people who are doing the coding and doing the actual work. And so what we do to even supplement our workforce is we work with a lot of nonprofit organizations that are able to bring that level of specific expertise in our inclusive search categories to help us make sure that we are, again, getting the right inputs to get the right outputs and to kind of keep that negativity kind of out of what we're doing, because I think you're spot on. You see it with hair texture, you see it with skin tone and body type, right? There are some negative ways to describe that and some positive ways to describe that. And what we are not going to do, I'll say that again, is allow people to put negative inputs kind of into our kind of algorithms, and then it kind of runs amok, and then you'll be reading news stories about it that we will not accept and not let come to life. So that's what we do. So we're not just even relying on our kind of employee base, but we have a lot of partners that we work with who are third parties who are very kind of steeped in experts in certain areas.
I just want to say, I don't want to ask you about other companies, but do you feel your peers have this much vigor in this subject matter? I mean, when you work with these nonprofits or collective think tanks or centers of excellence, do you feel that this topic is being handled with this level of sensitivity by maybe some others in your peer group?
I will say this. One of the things that we're very focused on at Pinterest is tuning for positivity. And I'll let everyone decide on their own. You don't have to say out loud. Is everyone doing that? Question mark.
Okay.
I did want to respond to that question as well if we have
go
time.
ahead, Dr. Joy. Yep.
So one of the things I thought through when doing some of the earlier algorithmic audits, right? So how we showed racial bias wasn't saying we're going to code by race. We said we're going to code by skin type. So we used the Fitzpatrick skin type scale. So we are looking for different types of objective measures. And so sometimes thinking about phenotype as a way to describe. The other thing is we get so caught up in language, right? And so because the language has so many different histories, so maybe I'm claiming my nappy, but you never call me, or whatever it is, right? And so there are other visual search, right? Just start thinking about other ways we can get at what we're trying to do, because sometimes we do get caught up in language. And then also giving people the ability, I think we did this a little bit with some of the work with Olay, right? Because here we have to think even like skin brightening, skin lightening. I was hearing things like the right to be light. I was like, oh, well, okay, this is a different paradigm than what I'm used to hearing when you're thinking about colorism and how it manifests in different types of ways, right? And so I think it's really important to break out of just one paradigm of searching, which right now it's very much text-based oftentimes. So that might be another way, right? What are ways we might describe this texture, something else that goes beyond any of the language we've come up with yet?
I know we have to wrap, but one more.
We have one more
more.
question.
Okay, one more.
I love that we have.
I don't know
less-
which one. I'm gonna go with Adrian and the magenta to tell us which question to call.
It's over here, Doug. I have the mic.
In yellow?
okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's all good. But you can all ask questions afterwards.
Yes, we will
right?
be here for
Don't run
1
away,
minute
we'll be here
after,
for a
and then we're
while.
leaving.
But this will be the final question of the day, and then you
Yeah.
can mingle and ask the questions to the panelists after.
No pressure.
Okay.
Not at all. You said if everybody in the audience had a problem. I do have a problem. The problem is that I'm running the HP e-commerce global-wise, the customer shopper insights, okay? And the problem that I'm facing, that a lot of our, when we conduct interviews, when we conduct lunch surveys, when there is an open-end question, I can tell you that I can detect that they use AI to respond. And that it's getting not a healthier data. It's like the quality of data is going down. What should I do? And by the way, all my students, they're reading your book, and your book really helped me to evangelize bias inside big organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I checked yesterday. It was number 10. I'm just saying this book is selling units. Yep. Go ahead. Who would you like to answer? I'm not sure. So I guess this would be AI being used to fill in data and insights as a workaround for the user that's actually making the quality of the data bad on the insights, which is actually driving the platforms. What is the solution?
Sense it's really hard. I don't have an easy answer for you. My reverse question is: are you saying that the people who are responding are using GPT tools to respond to your right? Right. Right. Is that? Are you talking about people from diverse communities or just generally across the board? Yeah. The only thing I'd say is, without knowing we should chat offline. Is your survey good enough? Frankly, and are you thinking about intelligence in your survey? Because if you're getting, sometimes it's not always the responses, sometimes it's what you've put out there as well. And I think the survey market could be augmented. I don't know.
Are you victim blaming? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Can we have some jokes?
I need some whiskey.
We've been outside since it was,
getting
before the
cold.
sun came up. I can't, no, we won't tell you the survey. Okay, so I did want to say we do have to wrap up. We will be here for a few minutes, and I hope next year, we'll continue to grow this, and Adrian will keep investing this. For those in the audience, I didn't say this when we started, but I contribute for Forbes. I write about diversity, equity, and inclusion, Doug Melville. So I'm writing a lot of articles about what we can all do and how to be more positive in this space. It's kind of a side hustle for me, but I think we need to really battle that narrative war. So whenever you can get a chance to post something positive or really look at the semantics of what's going on, I think your voice is really important and really well needed. And that's really the mission, to have a space and a place here at the CAN Diversity Collective. So we'll be over there taking pictures in front of the sign, and I would like you all to give a huge round of applause to our incredible panel.